Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is a very interesting lecture which will tell you about how the Sanatan Dharmis, the people of yore, the people who held the Vedas to their heart, deviated from the true path. Vedas still remain the same, but we have removed ourselves far away from the teachings of the Vedas, so much so that when we read the Vedas today, we do not comprehend even a little bit as to what is the subject of discussion in the Vedas. This is a very sorry state of affairs. As I have been saying repeatedly, all the adherents of all the religions, in fact, most of them have deviated from the teachings which were given to them by their respective avatars or messengers. So it's not that only the Sanatan Dharmis have deviated, but in fact, in their case, the deviation have been so long and so slow and over such a long period of time that it is very difficult to tell exactly at what stage did this deviation occur. But as I am saying repeatedly, the forces of darkness or Zulmat or the tamasic powers have been working repeatedly and at all times. If Noor has descended on this earth, and the Noor manifests itself in many a pious bodies that have lived on this earth, just in the same manner, Zulmat too uses this man itself as its tool and to deviate the mankind from the true teachings which come from the Lord of the entire mankind, of entire humanity. So Zulmat and Noor are at loggerheads. The purpose of Noor is to take us and lead us to the path of worship and the path of subjugation in front of God, while the purpose of Zulmat is to lead us away and lead us astray and to beckon us to our materialistic desires so that we do not come to the path of worship and the path of subjugation to the creator of this universe. So Zulmat and Noor, the forces of darkness and the forces of guidance, they have been working all through, and it is man who has to use his intellect and find the true path. This is the reason why we again reinforced the importance of using our intellect and mind, which has been given to us as the greatest gift and which alone makes us better than all the rest of the creation. So we invite you to keep your intellectual and reasoning faculties open while listening to our lectures. If we go through chapter 20 of Vishnu Puran, it clearly says that there were ascetics, yogis, who taught doctrine opposed to those of the Vedas. Now Vishnu Puran was written about 2500 years back, or maybe even more. And even at that time, the Vishnu Puran is talking about yogis and not common men, ascetics, who were considered to be ascetics, but whose teachings were far removed and in fact contradictory to the teachings of the Vedas. The fact that they have been described as ascetics shows that the lines had blurred, and it was not easy even in those times to distinguish whether the ascetic was propagating the teachings from the true sources or the divine sources, or whether he was misguiding us from the right path in the name of truth. So this was one group, and there was another group of Brahmins which felt that anyone who uttered words of disrespect to the authority of the eternal uncreated Veda was degraded and fallen from his state. So it was this group which felt that Sri Krishna's teaching were against the Vedic teachings and came up at loggerheads with Sri Krishna as well. The very first word of Gita says that it was a religious war. It was a dharmic war, war for reinstatement of dharma or religion or religious teaching. And people who came to oppose Sri Krishna, they too were blind, and they were led by the most revered gurus of those times, Bhishma Pitama and Guru Dronacharya, who opposed Sri Krishna's teachings when they felt that the teachings were against the Vedas. So even at that time there were people who were blindly worshipping what they understood of the Vedas and came at loggerheads with somebody who was an avatar or who had divine roots. So those people of the time were so blind in their adherence to a ritualistic religion that they came to oppose the divine avatar who had come from the same source from where the Vedas had come. that happens even to this day. There are so many interpretations of Vedas available in front of us that it is very difficult for a man trying to read or understand Vedas to conclude as to exactly what is the purpose or the purport of the Vedas. At some times or in some translations and interpretations, Vedas appear to be talking of steam engines and Madame Curie's experiments and even of steam engines and how water is composed, and there are other places or other interpretations of Vedas which are talking of the Devtas and how they fought with Asuras at one point of time, and they try to conclude, those commentators, that Devtas had a role to play in earlier times, but as if they have no role to play in this world. So this is how juxtaposed the teachings are, and they are altogether different, they are altogether contrary, and we then tend to favor one in front of the other. We claim to become the followers of one of the interpreters and then try to criticize the other one, and like vice versa. So but then eventually what happens is that we are not able to understand what exactly the Vedas are talking about. There are instances where a single commentator has given three altogether different meanings to a single verse, and this has happened so many places where the same word that has been used in the Vedas, then it has been described that it is either for the god or for the material fire or for illumination or for some other. So there are so many different interpretations of the single verse that has been given in the Vedas by a single commentator. So then you have no choice but to get confused. Chapter 7 of Maitreya Upanishad, when we read it, it explicitly describes to what extent degradation had taken place even at that time, and how lowly beings too were worshipped along with the Devtas. And Gita too, we have seen, shows that all such things were being worshipped as gods. And when the image is shown to Arjun, the image of manifest self or Paramatma is shown as devouring all the lowly beings which were being worshipped as gods. But it is not shown as devouring the Devtas, because the Devtas were from the true channels. They had a place in the divine creation plan, but all the rest of the people, all the rest of the forces or the beings that people had started worshipping as gods, they were shown as being devoured by the manifest self. Maitreya Upanishad says, despite having a grove in front of them, they cling to the low shrub. Further, it is stated that they all are under the delusion that they are worthy of heaven, but they are not. Even the various groups of priests and sadhus who are described in detail are not worthy of heaven. Now see the condition of those times in the words of Maitreya Upanishad, and introspect whether some of the evils described have continued to remain in our present society or not. Verse 7-8 of Maitreya Upanishad says, now then, the hindrances to knowledge, O king. This is indeed the source of the net of delusion. The association of one who is worthy of heaven with those who are not worthy of heaven, that is it. Now there are people of two kinds. One is worthy of heaven and the other is not worthy of heaven. But then heaven exists as per the Maitreya Upanishad. And today we have recorded a lecture on this subject, that there are people who have emerged who claim to say that there is no heaven and no hell as per the scriptures or as per the Hindu belief. And they say that whatever type of life you are leading on this earth, it makes your life heaven or hell. But then what is being said here? Clearly it is being described. Heaven is being described in clear words. And it is being said that even those ascetics are not worthy of heaven who do not live their life in a certain desired manner. Maitreya Upanishad says, though it is said there is a grove before them, they cling to a low shrub. Now there are some who are always hilarious, always abroad, always begging, always making a living by handicraft, and others who are beggars in town, who perform sacrifices for the unworthy, who are the disciples of Shudras, and who, though Shudras, are learned in the scriptures. We must remember, Shudras has been used here for those who are blind to reason. Whatever meaning we ascribe to the word Shudra is not the desired meaning here, but people who do not use their intellect, who are close, and who just follow or lead a life as a herd is led by a herdsman. And others there are who are wicked, who wear their hair in a twisted knot, who are dancers, who are mercenaries, traveling mendicants, actors, those who have been degraded in the king's service. And others there are who, for money, profess they can allay the evil influences of yakshas, that is sprites, rakshasas, that is ogres, ghosts, goblins, devils, serpents, imps, and the like. Just keep in mind whether we find such people around in our society today as well or not. And there are others who, under false pretext, wear the red robe, earrings, and skulls. And others there are who love to distract the believers in the Veda by the jugglery of false arguments, comparisons, and paralogisms. With these one should not associate. The Upanishad is even going to the extent of saying that we should not associate with such people, all those who have been described, who are using religion for petty gains, who are actually not working to improve their self or lead their self closer to the manifest self, and in getting indulged in all other activities that have nothing to do with religion. Read this, what these activities are described, and keep in mind that the Upanishad is asking you not to associate with such people. These creatures evidently are thieves and unworthy of heaven. For this has it been said, the world bewildered by doctrines that deny the self by false comparisons and proofs does not discern the difference between wisdom and knowledge. So wisdom and knowledge has to be attained. And the knowledge of the self is the highest of all knowledges. Even Gita says clearly that the best science is the science of the self. Are we studying self anywhere? Is there any discussion anywhere in our religious congregations how we can lead ourselves towards purity and towards zenith? We are not talking about those. We are only talking about rituals, and we are creating hatred in the name of religion. Is this religion? Religion teaches us to become better human beings. Religion teaches us to work on ourselves, to work on improving our own self so that our self become pure enough to meet the manifest self when it departs from our body. The passage that we read for you, it is a very important passage because it describes as to what extent degradation had occurred in the society. All types of pseudo-worshippers were present who were not worthy of going to heaven. There were some whose company itself people were advised not to keep. And there was a group of evil men who were working to distract the people from the Vedas by the jugglery of false arguments, comparisons, and parallelisms. Vedas are not so difficult to understand. We have made it difficult to understand. We have not translated them correctly because we didn't understand what exactly the Vedas were talking about. When the Vedas were talking about the division of Noor into two and the part of one getting united with the other division, the second division from the second division, we described it to be the illicit relationship without understanding that if we describe it as an illicit relationship, the very first relationship that occurred and the relationship which was exactly of the divinities even prior to the creation of man, we described it as illicit. And from there, all the creation evolved. So this is how we have understood the Vedas. Even today in our dictionaries and our translations, that relationship of Aditi with Deva is described as an illicit relationship. Such people are described as thieves who lead us away from the true teachings of Vedas and not worthy of heaven. The Upanishad tells clearly of the bad times through which the Sanatan Dharmis had to pass through. It is self that is described as the cause of all life and in which all life would finally disappear. The times were such that a group had appeared which altogether denied the existence of self. They even gave false comparisons and proofs to bewilder the common people. Since the word "the world" is used, it amply suggests this was not a group of few people, but a large number of them had come to believe so because of the teachings of these false priests. Gita says, as I said, that the biggest science is the science of the self. Even today, we must understand that if our teaching or if our understanding of religion or of our scriptures is not leading us towards purity of self, then it is not true teaching. The Upanishad clearly states that the seekers of knowledge and the wise knew the true identity of self, thereby showing there were indeed men with true understanding, albeit there were only few in numbers. Verse 7-9 of Maitreya Upanishad further describes the state of affairs during those times. False personalities were created to confuse the people regarding the most revered personalities. Even false gods were made. Religious beliefs were being doctored, and even the good teachings were being deliberately replaced by evil teachings. Worse still, people had begun to accept them as true. It is evident that the forces of misguidance and evil were at work with full force. 7:9 of Maitreya Upanishad says, "Verily Brahaspati, the teacher of the Devas, became Shukra, the teacher of the demons, and for the security of Indra and for the destruction of demons created this ignorance." This is a very interesting line because it shows that this ignorance was created willingly by Brahaspati because it wanted to create an atmosphere for the security of Indra. So why is it important, and why is security of Indra important? How can we harm Indra? Indra is far away somewhere in heavens while we are here on earth. Indra is a powerful divinity while we are common menfolk. How can we harm Indra? And the passage says that for the security of Indra and for the destruction of demons, this ignorance was created. Created by whom? By Brahaspati himself. You cannot understand this unless you understand what I have been trying to say all through. I have been saying that the forces of Noor were created right at the beginning of this creation, and they will exist all through, and it is their purpose of creation that they are supposed to lead us towards the worship of God. And Indra and rest of the divinities, they were supposed to come in human bodies and live on earth, and the purpose of creating the ignorance was that when that Noor, when that light descends in a pious human body on earth, people do not harm that body even prior to understanding the teachings of that person. So once the person will come and depart, once his teachings will be prevailing all over, then we'll realize the truth as to who Indra was and what were his teachings. By this, they declare the inauspicious to be auspicious and the auspicious to be inauspicious. Remember, it is being said that all this has been created purposefully. They saw that there should be attention to the law which is destructive of the teachings of the Vedas and the other scriptures. But I add here that there has to be a time where people will realize the truth and return to the true teachings of the Vedas. Therefore, one should not attend to this teaching. It is false. It is like a barren woman. Mere pleasure is the fruit thereof, as also of one who has fallen from the proper course. It should not be attempted. For this, has it been said, widely opposed and divergent are these two, the one known as ignorance and the other as knowledge. I, Yama, think that Nachiketas is desirous of obtaining knowledge, and many desires do not rend you. He who knows at the same time knowledge and ignorance together, having crossed death by means of ignorance, he wins the immortal by knowledge. Those who are wrapped up in the midst of ignorance, fancying themselves alone wise and learned, they wander, hard smitten and deluded like blind men, led by one who is himself blind. Now it is clear that the conflict between good and bad was at its peak, and the chief worry of the followers of the true path was to safeguard the teachings of the Vedas and to see to it that Indra is not harmed. The distinction between ignorant and the wise had diminished or almost evaporated. Those who were ignorant were considered knowledgeable, and likewise vice versa. People doubted the revealed scriptures like Vedas, and stories were circulating regarding the identity of the Devatas, who were sometimes portrayed playing villainous roles. Some of these stories, like those of the fights between Devatas and demons, were so sporadically spread that they have even reached us as canards. These stories, depiction of the Devatas, portraying them as people who do not even know how to lead a life, who keep fighting among themselves and who keep fighting with the rest. They are shown to us on TV serials and in various other programs. It is extremely doubtful whether they are based on truth. Yet such was the intensity of these narrations that the sage Yama had to take recourse to one such story to reveal the importance of Vedas and to downgrade the role of demons. Even today we see war of Shiv and Vishnu, war between Indra and Krishna, between Devtas and Shiv, between Shiv and Ganesh. All these myths have come to us, though they have no truth in it. And there is no mention of these myths in the scriptures. This is apparent from the following verse 7:10 of Maitreya Upanishad. It says, "Verily, the Devtas and the demons, being desirous of knowing the self, went into the presence of Brahma. Having bowed before him, they said, Revered sir, we are desirous of knowing the self, so do you tell us. Then after having reflected a long while, he thought in himself, Verily, these demons are desirous of a self different from the true one. Therefore, a very different doctrine was told to them. On that, these deluded demons here live their life with intense attachment, destroying the means of salvation and praising what is false. They see the false as if it were true, as in jugglery. Therefore, what is set forth in the Vedas, that is the truth. On what is said in the Vedas, on that wise men live their life. Therefore, a Brahman should not study what is not of the Veda. This should be the purpose." Now it is clear, even demons owe their role to certain divine plan. What the forces of darkness are doing, they too owe their allegiance to the manifest self. It is their role. They are there to misguide us, whereas the forces of Nur or the forces of light are there to lead us towards the worship. And even the scriptures like Vedas and Gita and all the scriptures that have come in different parts of the world, the purpose of those scriptures are to lead us to the worship of the absolute God. And we must understand and we must go back to the scriptures to know what is desired of us. Vedas, it is reiterated here as well, they are the supreme source of all rightful information. And the fact that wise men live their life waiting for the Devtas to come too can be derived from Vedas and various Upanishads. Since the authenticity and greatness of Devtas is maintained in all books having a divine association, that is the Vedas and the Gita, nobody can deny their role in this universe created by God. However, since there is a great deal of confusion relating to the true position of the Devtas, we decided to stick only to the divine books, namely the Vedas and the Gita and the Upanishads, to understand their true role in divine creation plan. If the Vedas are revealed scriptures as they are rightly believed to be so, there must be some very strong reason why the entire Vedas, all four of them, talk of Devtas and nothing else. But we have failed to comprehend. If Vedas are full of description of Devtas, why is it that the present Hindu society does not give the same status to the Devtas? Why is it that scholars, some of them translate the term Devta as steam engines, airplanes, etc., and other commentators show that the Devtas existed at one period of time, but their role is not that important anymore? Surely there is something amiss. Does that mean that the Vedas have lost their relevance now? No, never. If this is not so, then we will have to accept that we have not understood the Vedas truly, and even the Devtas, we know nothing about them. The Devtas are, as have been described in various Upanishads, truly the source of all knowledge revealed to show us the true path. Ved says, Om Vishwani Devs Savitar Duritani Parasova Yad Bhandrta Nasova. O all creating Dev. I might not have read the Sanskrit properly, but the translation says, O all creating Dev, please sweep away from us all sins, vices and miseries, and grant us all that is beneficial and auspicious. Now Devtas have the power to sweep away sins from us. They have the power to remove the vices, and they have the power to replace miseries with happiness. They have the power to grant us all that is beneficial and auspicious, and yet we do not know who the Devtas are. If we do not know them, if we have not understood their role in divine creation plan, how are we supposed to get benefit from them? In this verse, Devtas are being invoked to remove our sins, vices and miseries, and also for granting all that is beneficial and auspicious for us. In fact, if we find that all sacred scriptures of Hindus, namely the Vedas Upanishads and Gita are full of mention of the term Dev or Devta, who are being invoked in the aforementioned mantra to remove all our sins, vices and miseries. Also it is clear that things beneficial and auspicious are granted by the Devtas. But what is not clear is who are the Devtas. Do the Hindus or anybody else for that matter know their identity? If we do not know their identity, how will we invoke or remember them? We are being told in Gita that the person is a thief who does not offer part of his food to the Devtas before eating. Still, we do not know their true identity. Come, be with us and we'll show to you with proofs the real identity of Devtas and how we are related and indebted to them in our lives. We will reveal the true identity of the Devtas as given in the Vedas, Upanishads and Gita and their relationship with God. Come, we invite you to explore the identity of those whom you have always adored, revered and perhaps also worshipped at times.